welcome back to another New World video. This time I'm coming at you with the Butcher artifact sword and shield with the spear build, what I use in game, on stream, all that kind of stuff in mostly PvE. I will be using it in some PvP, like 3v3 arenas. I just need to fine tune some bits and bobs with my gear. And yeah, definitely mostly use this in M1s, M2s, and M3s. And we've managed to bring it all the way down to 5com, which is nice as well. So we'll go in there and discuss that. First of all, let's just show you the Butcher, just in case, for whatever reason, you've not seen it yet. This is one of the artifacts. So this is only like a one-time sort of weapon. You can't get 2 of these, 3 of these, 4 of these, and then change the perks on some of them. So then you can rotate, sadly. But hey, that's just what New World are giving us. I'll show you what I slot on mine just for a start. So obviously, once you've completed all the quests and stuff like that, you can get a couple of different perks in there. It comes with Magnify, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, let's be honest. Hopefully they fix that one day and just give us all the points into our attribute slots, and then it'll just be a lot easier. Our overall attribute slots, that'll be so much easier. Right, bloodletting, bleeds. So there's gonna be a big thing about the build, bleeds. Bleeds last 33% longer, and it works on both weapons. So ideally, you want to be using your secondary weapon, which causes something like bleeds, like rapiers, spears, stuff like that. Now, I've gone with gemstone slot. That's what I believe to be the highest damage output on this build if you put it on the Butcher. I've gone with ignited rally. Obviously, slash damage, from which the sword mostly does, is most effective rawly, if you like, against angry earth mobs. So when we do come against angry earth mobs, I want to then be using ignited. So I'm not going to swap this gemstone, this rune glass gemstone, because it's just too expensive to keep changing it every single time I change a dungeon. But overall, the most damage I'm ever going to do with this sword should be against angry earth mobs, so therefore put an ignited rally. That makes the most sense. We've got jagged whirl. So whirling blade inflicts bleed, dealing 10% weapon damage for 6 seconds. So we want to be smashing as much, obviously, whirling blade in there. And then obviously empowering whirling blade comes with this as well. So when 3 or more enemies are within its radius while performing a whirling blade attack, gain 52% base damage. Now I want to mention whirling blade really quickly. It must have been now maybe 2 months ago, maybe 2.5 months ago, way before the expansion came out. They actually buffed whirling blade a little bit, so the hit radius is a lot larger. If you've not played sword and shield for a couple of months, or maybe last year or whatever, I swear to God, whirling blade is so much better. You hit tons of mobs, especially if they're all really, really close to you. And then keenly jagged. So this inflicts bleed on critical hits, dealing 10% weapon damage per second for 6 seconds. I just want to quickly mention keenly jagged. I've actually tested this by adding keenly jagged on like a shield as well, and you don't get 2 times keenly jagged. That is the Butcher. Now if you want to know where to get the Butcher from, in case you've never got it before, you need to get over to Dynasty Shipyard. When it is on mutations, you can get it from M1, 2, or M3. I was actually, you know, insane luck god on stream a couple months ago when this came out. We got it on our first ever run. We did an M1, we crawled all the way up to that baggy after beating the final boss, and boom, we got it first run. So yeah, Dynasty Shipyard, only when it's on mutation week. If it's not, you can't get it. You gotta wait. That sucks. Okay, and I'm gonna be pairing this with a spear. Now, just in general, when I'm using this spear, I might be using it on a main spear build as well. So therefore, I go with the empowered rally this time. So it's the 12% damage again, but this time it's dealing the arcane damage, which is obviously best against the corruption mobs, which is where the spear will be as well. This comes with vicious, keenly jagged, and bleeding sweep. Now, like I said, I got 2 of these. I do also have one lying around. Here we go. And this one I've got enfeebling skewer. It all just depends. If we're coming up and we're struggling a little bit in M3s, maybe on the bosses, for example, we know the enfeebling difference it's got in there, the weaken and the rend difference it's got, sorry. So yeah, I'm going to be using enfeebling skewer. But mostly in terms of pure damage output, I'm going to be using the bleeding sweep version. Now, reason why I like this, for example, if I was to do one rotation, something like this, and then land one of those, as you can see here, multiple ticks. Some of those doing 1200, some 300, some 400, some 300, you know what I mean, some 700s in there. I can see multiple ticks. Now that's the point of this build, basically, is to be using mostly the sword. We throw in the rotation of the spear every now and again when the cooldowns are up, and we can do a lot with this build. Do you know what I mean? We can apply rends, we can apply weakens, we can apply slows, which buffs our damage. We can apply weaken and rends with the spear as well. We can knock down the mobs. Basically it's an all-around pretty decent build, in my opinion. I really like this build. Attributes. Now, I have done some testing. I'll put a little screenshot up. It's just some mini testing. It's nothing over dramatic. It's, basically all I did here is I went ham on these dummies as much as I possibly could. I did different rotations on should I use the spear, should I not use the spear, should I just go all sword and shield, which attributes are the best, you know, to try and get the most amount of damage out of there, all that kind of stuff. And basically I found out that, yeah, this is the best combination I could possibly get, which is kind of weird. You would have thought that, like, you know, maybe even like 50 int would have been pretty good, maybe even 25 focus would have been pretty good, but I did it all. You know, I changed up all the numbers. What did we do? We did 350 strength, 212 dex, 50 int. We tried 350 and then 257, as you can see here. We also tried 303 strength, 303 dex. I also tried 300 strength, 217 dex, 50 int. You know what I mean? I tried different combinations, and the fastest I could kill these dummies was with 350 strength and 257 dex. I have also tested this build in M3 this week. I think with barnacles, for example, with the full fire, you know, gear on, as you can see here, and you can survive pretty much until you get to the final boss. Then you got to up it to like 50 con if your team is really struggling, 100 con. But in general, that's what we're going to run in terms of attributes. Now, weapon mastery on the sword and shield. Here we go. You will get a couple of people saying you could use reverse stab, and that means that you could just get the uptime on the whirling blade even higher. The thing that I tend to find is, though, if you were just fighting like clump after clump after clump after clump just all the time, this isn't a bad combination, reverse stab into whirling blade. The problem is sometimes there's only 1 or 2 mobs there, or sometimes you're on a boss and then the reverse stab doesn't do that much. So this is the build that I go for. We go straight into whirling blade, of course, that comes on the sword. We go in with opportunity, so the blade inflicts 15% rend, and then whirling blade reduces its cooldown by 5%. Over onto leap and strike. You're going to need the leap and strike armor perk. We'll talk about that in a minute. Leap forward, dealing 100% thrust damage and staggering your target. If you hit a foe below 30% health, deal 50% more damage, and on successful hit, inflict a 30% slow. This is quite important, and I'll show you why in just a moment. All the way up here as well, we've got empowered stab, so heavy attacks grant you 30% empowerment. So one of the other buffs we were talking about, you get to self-empower, which is really good with this build. The final attack in your light attack chain inflicts a 15% rend, so now we've got 2 sets of rend coming off from the sword there. Sword and shield critical strike chance increased by 10%. You're always going to want this. Plays nicely with vicious and stuff like that as well. Abilities deal 10% more damage to slowed foes. Now here we go. So obviously we're slowing the foes with 2 different ways there, and well, 2 different ways once we go to the shield here, and obviously we're going to deal more damage to those when they are slowed. While your health is full, deal 15% more damage. Again, we're also going diamond on the rune glasses, so this all ties in. Now this is a fairly big one, depending on your group composition. Obviously, if your tank is a sword and shield tank and they're running leadership, you don't want to stack 2 times leadership. However, we're just going to talk about this build specifically DPS wise and how good it is. But while holding a sword, the damage of all group members is increased by 10%. And then over to the right hand side, the defender side of the tree, we have sturdy shield, grant an additional 15% physical armor. This is always nice, especially while it's going 5 con. We've got reduced damage from all magical types by 10%. This is both good in PvP and PvE, but obviously with mutations like we're mostly speaking about here, this is really good. Now, final blow. I want to quickly talk about this. Now, in the chain that we're going to be doing, we're always going to be doing the last attack in the chain. That's what we're always going to be doing. So, this to me does more damage. Yes, it does cause some natural threat in there. The only time I've ever struggled in M1s, 2s, or 3s with taking aggro from the tank, and I'm going to be completely honest here, the only time that's ever happened is if the tank sucks. Do you know what I mean? Or they just don't quite have all of their gear yet. You know what I mean? They're still maybe gearing up from the expansion, and therefore they don't have all their perks, and therefore they're struggling a little bit. So you might just have to play around with this depending on the group you're with. If you're taking the aggro all of the time, don't be mean. Don't tell your tank in group chat that they suck. Just DM them and tell them they suck. But essentially, yeah, you use this full time. Unless your tank can't hold on the aggro, then you take it out and you put it back in when you're playing with, you know, slightly more aggressive tanks. Down here we've got a recuperation. All incoming healing and regeneration is increased by 10%. Now, shield rush for me, I absolutely love this skill. It's one of my favorite skills in the game. Rush forward 5 meters, staggering and pushing back foes. This attack deals 100% strike weapon damage. This ability has grit as well. So if you're playing in like fire mutations, for example, or any kind of mechanics in mutations or PvE where you're getting knocked down, at that exact moment, if you know you're about to get knocked down, you can actually use a shield rush and you won't, which is really handy. Improved rush. On a successful hit, all enemies within 5 meters are inflicted by 20% weaken for 10 seconds. That's one of the longest weaken effects that you can get in the game, which is quite nice. And then down here again, we're going to be slowing the foes with this, which ties back into doing more ability damage, when we slow the foes. I'll quickly mention the spear build. If you want to take a quick screenshot, feel free. This is what I use. Only point of contention probably is deep wound, bleed durations increased to 15 seconds. But I tend to find, unless it's a boss, mobs aren't alive for 15 seconds, and if they are, you're doing a bad job. So this doesn't actually come into effect, if that makes sense. Plus, I think there's like a cap on bleeds times. So we go with Deadly Reach. I'll just read these one out since we're mostly focused on the butcher here. But Deadly Reach, we're going in with Merciless Strength. We're going in with Sweep, Tenacious Sweep, Coup de Grace. We're obviously taking that bleeding sweep like we mentioned, perk on the spear. We go all the way over to Skewer, and then we've got Deadly Ambush. We've got Follow Through. Up in the top left, Precise Jabs. On the top right, Refreshing Jabs. Here we have Crippling Jabs, and here we have Finishing Blows. We have Perforate, of course, one of the biggest spear skills ever used in the game. We go down to Rupturing Strikes. We go down to Impactful Strikes and Exacerbating Crits. We have Aggressive Maneuvers. We have Exposed Wounds. And then down here, Exploited Weakness, 10% bonus damage for each debuff on your target. This build does put quite a few debuffs on there, so overall, we're just adding to our damage. Now, if we talk about like the armor and the jewelry that you need for this build, let's start with the shield, because this is quite a big one. Now, don't forget, we've done videos on this in the past. Hopefully you have this information anyway. The gear score of the shield does not affect your overall gear score, okay? So ignore that. You could have a 500 gear score one if you wanted. The only thing that changes is the percentages on the perk. So keen 6%, for example, if you had like a much higher one, the percentages here will be, you know, slightly higher, 0.5% higher, 1% higher. So the end goal for me is to go for keen, vicious, shield aggression, and enchanted at 700 gear score. Until I find one of those, we use this for now. But that's the perks that you want to go for. Basically what we're trying to do here, we're trying to add as many perks on the shield on top of the sword as possible. So we don't want the same perks, you know, we don't want to double up on any of these here like we used to be able to do with Bane. We can't do that anymore. Keen, vicious, shield aggression, and enchanted are my favorite to use. Now in general on your armor, none of these are going to help you with damage output, so I'm not going to mention them too much, but in general you want health and you want enchanted ward. The information I've been given is most of the damage that you receive in PvE mutations or dungeons actually goes into enchanted ward, in the sense that that basically works most of the time. So enchanted ward is one of the best defensive perks you can get, but we're not going to talk too much about the defensive perks because, you know, in general you'll know those, but in general you want to go for health as much as you can, enchanted ward as much as you can. You want to get your 4 refreshing in there somewhere, and then yeah, that's basically what you want to do. I go with featherweight. I've done a big video on this in a couple of weeks ago. I love featherweight. I think it's really, really good. Now in general I probably want to put health on this. However, not really wasting money on the health perk at the moment, so I've just gone with Fortifying Shield Rush. So no matter what, I've always got Shield Rush up. Then the plan would be to get health and enchanted ward on every other piece. Then we have a well-rounded defense. Amulet-wise, obviously when you're in mutations, you want to go with what if your protection is, so your flame, your void, whatever. You want to hit 4 out of 4 refreshing. And then obviously health. Now what would also be most beneficial would be to have empowered on there, because then when you're self-empowering, like with the big heavy attack, that empowerment is going to last that little bit longer, and therefore you don't have to do as many heavy attacks and break your combos. Now onto the Heartrune. 2 different options in my opinion. The brutal Heartrune of Grasping Vines, so you're applying the rend and the weakens, or you go with detonate. Now detonate, if you're comfortable, especially running M3s, you go with the big detonate, you do even more damage. So ideally detonate when you're not quite comfy. You can sort of just, you know, I would not go with Stone Form because then you're just losing all kinds of damage. I would go with the Grasping Vines. Onto the ring. Now Privateer's Heirloom is what I'm currently running. We're going with Leeching, we're going with Hearty. They are pretty much musts for this build, especially if you're going to take this into PvP arenas, for example. Now slash damage, let me just discuss, because this one looks like it's really, really good. Now the slash damage, again, from the best of my knowledge, is in the empowerment sort of table. So if you're hitting empowerment cap because you've got honing stones, maybe there's an oblivion on the floor, maybe you've done your heavy attack to give you, the buff that you get from the sword build. Basically, once you hit that empowerment cap, this slash damage effectiveness doesn't do anything. So you want to start off with, or if you're playing with pug groups, you want to start off with the slash damage, because that will help you out, because maybe you don't have that healer giving you the oblivion on the floor and stuff like that all the way through the dungeons. But eventually you want to move on to Keen Awareness. So I'm just going to re-roll one of these in a couple of weeks once we've got a full team together back in the company. We're doing our speed runs or we're doing our score runs in M3s. I'm going to change this to Keen Awareness. So basically, if you've not already made your ring and you maybe want to skip that part, go for Leeching, Hearty, and Keen Awareness. Down into the earring, there's no real earrings that kind of help too much in terms of plus damage, and I still don't have perfect ones just yet. Refreshing Toast is always nice. Regenerating is like, nah, maybe like a 4th choice perk maybe on there. Some of the other ones on there, like when you use a potion, you can get empowerment. It only lasts for like 3 seconds. It does technically help, I guess, but hey, doesn't matter too much in terms of the specificness of your earring. Now, we've listed some pros and cons for this build. It's a high damage output build. Now, you've seen some of the leaderboards out there in terms of like, or even like tier lists for like which weapons currently in PvE are the highest damage. The Butcher sword alone comes around about 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 5th, depending on which dungeon you're in, which mob types you're in. And don't forget, 2 of those slots are taken up by rapiers. So where it's 3rd, it's actually 2nd. Where it's 5th, it's actually 4th. Obviously, you don't want to use 2 rapiers. Now, only times I wouldn't use this build if your tank is going basically exactly how I am right now, but just with a bit more con, because I tend to play that as well. If your tank is already playing sword and shield, or if your tank is already using butcher, obviously, or if somebody else is playing sword and shield, don't double up, because that won't really work. But what would be really, really nice is if you're playing with, say, like, for example, like a spear main, a rapier ice gauntlet, as your like 3 DPS, that's a pretty good combination. And then obviously if your tank was maybe like, say, greatsword warhammer, and then obviously your healer, that would be a really good time to use sword and shield. Now, in terms of the testing, like I said, we put the numbers up and stuff like that. I did find my best overall combination, and just so you know how I was testing it. So if I've put, for example, on that screenshot there, if I've put sword and shield, like just sword and shield and not sword and shield and spear, all it means is when I was fighting this dummy, I was just literally using the sword and shield, and I was not using anything else. I was trying to keep my empowerment up as much as I possibly could. So then when it runs out, big heavy attack, and I was just fighting the dummy and timing it. Now, obviously, when I put sword and shield and spear, again, this is a butcher build, so we're not going to focus too much on the spear in general. This is like yeah, it's just a butcher build. What I would do is something like this. Do you know what I mean? I'll be fighting like this, and then when the spear cooldowns are down, like if you're picturing when you're fighting mobs and stuff, it would look something like this. But then you're going to straight back to the sword and shield, and you're going to mostly using the sword. Look at all those ticks, by the way. Look at those. That is just beautiful. And you're going to be focusing mostly on sword and shield. And then every now and again, you switch back up and you go over to the spear. You knock all your mobs down. If you can picture that, you need that big heavy coup de grace in there. And then look at the ticks. They're really, really nice. And these will be higher against mobs and stuff when you've got more empowerment or whatever. So yeah, this is how I'd be running the testing, just so you know, like roughly how I was doing that. Now, I'm just going to throw in here just like a little example. It's just a mini example to clip from an M3. It's nothing spectacular. In fact, I think I'm 1 or 2 pieces of gear behind when I actually made this recording. But this is just proof that, you know, you can do some decent tick damage in here. This is against the garden, the Genesis boss in there. You know, it's okay. It's not too bad. I'm not trying to show this some big dramatic example here. I just wanted to put this in the video just to show you that I'm using this in M3s. In fact, on this run here, I think I actually have 50 con on, so the damage would be higher if we went with the 5 con. But I just want to show you like a mini example. Also, we don't have no void empowerment from the healers, you can tell there as well. So damage in general will be higher than what you see on your screen here. But overall, guys, there is my butcher guide. Okay, that is how I use the butcher. That's how, you know, it's how I plan to use it. I'm getting some good success in the minute. I'm running M3s now with only 5 con, apart from when we come to final bosses. Then I have to go to 50, or if we're with a really weak team, 100. But most of the time, we're absolutely fine. So long as, you know, there's some decent AoE heals down, you know, it's pretty good. But all in all, I really like this build. It's one of my favorite builds in New World. We're applying bleeds, we're applying slows, we're applying knockdowns, we're applying rends, we're applying weakens. We're doing AoE damage in general. Not so much as maybe like a greatsword, but in general, we are doing pretty, you know, AoE damage. It's just nice. Self-empowerment's in there as well. There's loads of like good things. You know, we're buffing the whole team with 10% empowerment as well, which is nice. There's some really, really good overall uses for this build. Now, if you want to see me play this build more than these mini, tiny examples I've shown you, because I can't make this a half an hour or 45-minute video, the comment section will kill me. They'll probably kill me if this video makes it to 20 minutes. Let's just be honest. So head over to my Twitch channel. I'm back to streaming this week that this video comes out. Took a little bit break, some personal family things going on. So I took a couple of weeks break, but I will be back this week as of the 13th of November. You should see me live on stream at my sort of usual times. And yeah, you'll see me running this build. If you want to come in and ask any more questions or any tweaks and things that, you know, you have that discussion, jump into my Twitch channel. And as ever, if you've enjoyed the video, comment section down below, let me know. Drop a like, drop a sub, all that kind of stuff. If you want to see any more different build guide videos, comment section down below. I'll go make one, I'll record it, we'll get it shipped out. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.